Hello, hello. So I'm on holiday now, and obviously all the drama happens while I'm gone. So I thought I'd do a quick update. I don't think there's going to be much more than I've said previously, quite honestly, because it really is just waiting till this thing finds a bottom. We've obviously had a lot of drama in the market over the last week from gold dropping down 15 odd percent, all those straight down into weekly demand, silver dropping down 40%. Um, but also dropping, just trying to sort these charts out, but also dropping straight down into weekly demand there, although it's come back for a second test already. So yeah, that kind of dragged the rest of the market down. I didn't even see any news that really um, made this an expected timing for the drop, which is surprising. Normally you'd see some news at the top, but maybe I just missed it. I don't feel like I missed it, but I did look a little bit, but I was also rushing to get ready to go away. Similarly, we've had now some retracement in S&P. Get rid of that sidebar again. S&P and Nasdaq have been well, they've just been sideways really for the last week compared to Bitcoin, which has obviously been a lot more down. But they're obviously a lot less bullish than they have been previously, and they're still sort of thinking about what they're doing at these highs. Um, and the dollar had a big drop previously, not loaded yet. Yeah, so the dollar obviously had a big drop. When's that? The end of January. So yeah, the last few days has now been retracing some of that drop, and it has made monthly supply, so it's coming straight back up into this. So we had obviously all the monthly closes for the end of January, and it didn't really make much of a difference in crypto, to be honest. Obviously, the old chart has new monthly supply, more monthly supplies than monthly demands, but in fact, most of the alts didn't really have any change. They already all had 3 weekly supplies and things like that. um, the dollar's still really in limbo. It's still coming off the annual demand at this base, having had, taken out the two lows, gone a bit deeper into annual demand, but now it's coming straight back up into monthly supply. So we need to see what the reaction is going to be here and if that's going to allow the rest of the markets to bounce a little bit. Um, Onto Bitcoin. So I just looked at the clean Bitcoin chart to start with the high time frame. Obviously, a lot of the low time frame possible long entries just got blown through. I had this box for the possibility of a failed wave if this was going to be to the bottom. So the box, if you'll recall from previous videos, was 113 to 127 fib. And that is like if you look at some of the previous lows and also the previous highs, we quite often retrace an initial low or initial high into that extended area at the 113. It's called the failed wave. So it's always worth keeping an eye on a possibility of a bounce there, which then might front run major levels that if a lot of people are looking at major levels. Um, so obviously we had some consolidation in this box, but then it made a daily supply, came off it, and has now dropped into the 3 month demand. Now, 3 month demand, if I just show you the clean chart, without my drawings a mess all over it. It's not the best 3 month demand. It does have a two candle, but this is the level that it's hitting now. Can obviously also retrace all the way back to the start of it if it wants. This is a demand here. It has broken a 3 month demand. Obviously, it could still end up as a swing failure because it's got still 2 months to see where the close of the 3 month is going to be. Similarly, I don't really consider this as a weak demand because it didn't really break above the highs significantly. So whether you consider that a break of structure, I mean, on the 3 month basis, we need to see it close is, depending on how you analyze. Um, from a monthly perspective, we had now, this is the fifth month of down or the 6 month of down there. Um, and but yeah, for me, like this is a fairly critical area we're coming into. So the more aggressive entry would be nowish, and then there's also a monthly demand in there a bit lower and a 2 monthly zone in there lower. So the high time frame we really want this to be holding. So this is my first kind of major area of interest, failing that black box that I had for the failed wave type area. Take some of these levels now, just hitting I think a 4 or 5 day demand inside that. We are also at in the So if you fib from the bottom of this wave from August 2024, we are just hitting the 61 of that, so that's sort of in its favor as well. I think it's on the 70. It's just come through the 70 of the linear fib, but that's the 61 log fib. Um, and of the the fib from the whole of the up move, I haven't actually looked at that yet. But if we fib from right at the bottom from 2022 to the top, the log fib is significantly lower at around 35k, and the linear fib will be deeper in this 3 month zone, so around 58k, so around here. So obviously we can still go a lot deeper into this zone, so be careful, but you could be watching for now, or starting to DCA if you are looking at higher time frame entries. But if you're a trader, obviously you need to wait for breaks of structure and things on the lower time frames because it's very, very early. From a confluence perspective, to be frank, I don't love it as yet. For a start, Korea could go a bit lower, so I have alerted the BTC Korea chart um, on this 3 month zone as well. So obviously it's still got a few percent before it gets down there if we were going to get a confluence. And we do typically get some sort of confluence. Um, so just be conscious of that this can still go at least a little bit lower, again, presuming it doesn't go significantly deeper into the zone. Um, what have we got here? The CME is obviously still hitting the 3 month. Take that 3 day out now, is also hitting the 3 month as well. So that's fine and confluent for now. US dollar dominance um, is less clean. So the tether chart, so obviously we did played out that little squiggle I had from, I think that was, when was that, November, that I did when we basically hit the top there going, this is what I wanted. I thought we might get, well, it was again, not necessarily going to do the same as 2022, but all those comparisons we've been making since 2022, since the top. So over here, this had a few more days of like waiting to break the high, whereas this time has literally just run. There were no, I mean, there were some days just below, but then once it ran, it just ran. And it's just not very clean up here, so I can't really. Now we've come straight through the 3 month level there. There's a lot of chop on the lower time frames, so it's possible this can even go up to the 3 week and take out these equal highs up here. There's equal highs or a little bit off at all time high there. Um, yeah, so I mean, it's just waiting. Like that, I sort of said there were levels we were looking at for buys on Bitcoin, but also it was don't knife catch. My other concern when I looked at the dominance charts was USDC. So again, these are just some projections I had from last year, in fact. So I think we were talking about it when we were coming down here last year, and I was saying, well, the green, in fact, was my preferred, or not, yeah, my higher probability entry or like line. The black was just need to wait and see, expecting the bounce in here and see what the reaction is, whether we get a lower high. So again, you're looking at, are we going to get an A, B, C, something like that? Or is this just a retracement for a continuation upward? And it's just a question of whether the correction's completed, whether we get an ABC that makes a triangle somewhat like that before. But this, while people don't like me saying this because this is basically saying Bitcoin's going to die, um, or at least like correct significantly, that really is, if you look at this chart in isolation, that's kind of what you expect. It's had this huge up move since 2019, and we expect some sort of a decent sized correction. So, but it still needs to go up and test this high first to check this is over. So the green line was in fact my kind of higher probability line. The black line was, okay, we just need to wait and see what happens. And the red line was the least likely or the less likely line. So we're kind of so far following the green. My concern here is, again, we've tested a few times this monthly supply, once and twice, and now we've come through it. So it's still possible we swing fail here, but given how the tether chart isn't very clear on where the top is, this obviously has some significant space before it potentially gets up to where you would sell this if you were looking to sell, based off this chart. And I've used USDC for a while. It can be good confluence, but I still don't know whether it's, I've used the tether dominance chart a lot longer, so I still don't know if this is like how reliable this is. Is this really likely to go all the way up here? Because if that does go all the way up there, then obviously the tether chart is very likely to break the high. Um, so yeah, I'm not really sure. But either way, we're a possible area we can see a bounce in crypto. But the confluence isn't perfect. Um, Looking at total and total two and all that, again, the clarity isn't there. We've got zones that have been tested. So total basically looks like Bitcoin, but there was a 3 month demand stacked on top of a 3 month demand. So Bitcoin's come through the first one. Total is just heading towards the bottom of that. So I've still got that brown zone drawn in for now because it hasn't broken it as yet. But again, it hasn't got the clarity to see where I would really expect a high probability bounce at the low, particularly given it's already tested once. Total 2, which obviously resembles Ether a bit more, again, is coming back to the start of this up move, a decent zone. So that's maybe a better area to consider looking for buys. But again, the bigger picture on all of this stuff, I just really don't like these double tops, and this is less like a head and shoulders, but the head and shoulders that we see on total 3, or no, on others more than total 3, I think. So again, this is total 3. Um, we're hitting this 3 month zone. We're at the daily at the start of this last 3 month up move, but it's not a strong zone and not really a zone that I want to look for longs in blindly anyway. Like while we can watch this zone, and I wouldn't be shorting here. It's broken trend. We've got the bigger double top. So really, I'd like to be looking for buys on total 3, and that this will more closely resemble the majors. But when we're down here somewhere. Whether it gets a bounce in between, we need to wait and see. Others, obviously, I've talked about extensively, and this is now, interestingly, actually, despite the big drop on the market, this hasn't really dropped that significantly. When I came back to this chart, having been on the plane and having seen so many of my alt long alerts hit, I thought this would be lower. So I'm quite surprised that this hasn't hit here. I actually even thought it might be lower or somewhere in this area. So I'm not sure whether that means that's good for alts. I mean, it certainly is reflected in the dominance charts, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, or whether it just means, unfortunately, they've got much more significant drops that they can do. Because as I've said before in many of my videos, this zone has been tested so many times that I wouldn't expect this to hold when it gets here. So the green, again, if you've watched my previous videos, the green line were my sort of short-term projections. The red one was the higher probability one. The green one was the optimistic one if we were going to get taking out some of these trend line stops, which we saw some alts do, but overall the market didn't, and it followed the red line, which was more what we expected. And again, showing this picture repeatedly. So my bigger projections were the black line, the optimistic, if we test higher, black line, but potentially, at least coming down into there, potentially coming down into here was kind of what I was really expecting on this. On DeFi was disappointing as well. So DeFi had been much, much stronger than the rest of the alt market, but unfortunately now has been much weaker since the drop. So while the others chart isn't looking that bad, total DeFi obviously is coming down now again, testing this monthly zone again. It's got a monthly at the base and looking very much like a head and shoulders here now. Again, with significant drop if it wants to go deeper down there, that would be where your preferred buy would be, somewhere in this area. Change the color of that. I'm not sure why that's bright pink. But again, how long it's going to take to get down there? Is it going to get down there in a few candles, or is it going to take some weeks or months to head to this level? I don't know. Could still get another bounce here. It is still holding support, but it's not something that I really would be confident in buying right here. Similarly, total E100 is also looking pretty ugly and weaker than the others charts. I'm not sure why the others chart is sort of holding up. And initially I was thinking it's because of privacy coins. But those have actually dropped quite a lot. So I don't know whether it's just some of the older stuff, because I guess total DeFi, actually, I'm not sure if DeFi is going to include the privacy coins. Do they count as decentralized finance? I'm not sure. but total DeFi tends to be the bigger ones like Aave and things like that. Um, and total E100 is excluding the top 100, so it's like generally the shittier shitcoins. Whereas others is maybe just sort of that middle section. So I don't know why the middle section are holding, but it's possibly because it would include the older coins and the Dino coins, which are the ones that have support. So the newer coins, yes, are the ones that can run, but then when the market does drop, they have absolutely no support. Whereas we are seeing things like, I'm trying to think, well, like the football coins, like that little video I did the other day on the football coins, for example, which weirdly are stronger, but potentially because of the World Cup. And things like, I don't know, Vet, One, um, I haven't checked. I remember Veteran One. I feel like are on major demands. Maybe like that type of genre of coins, things we were trading maybe 3 4 years ago, rather than things that we were trading 1 2 years ago. Um, Maybe that's holding the others market up a little bit. Whereas Total DeFi and Total E100 have got weaker. So I've got this yearly zone alerted on Total E100. That would be the next kind of level of interest. Again, we don't have the history on this chart. It was there when they first released it, but I've alerted that as the possibility of looking for long entries on alts. Um, we're coming down to the level of this wick. Whether we're going to make it all the way down there again, I don't know, but that would be my preferred zone to look for longs if we get there. Um, just quickly on dominance, I guess. So I did talk about this in the last video as well. I was saying that, it might make a monthly demand. I think it didn't. I think it closed like on the edge, and I've drawn it in anyway. Yeah. Let me hide my drawing so you can see. Yeah, so it closed very slightly below, so it didn't really create a monthly demand, but it was weirdly one of the stronger charts. So I was quite surprised to see that, and then interested to see what would happen, because if this was looking stronger and is breaking trend, etc. But yet the others chart, the market cap chart, I still expect to be going down. It's slightly contrary. Um, so I don't know, but maybe we're going to get that pick up and see. Maybe we're going to get some sideways on Bitcoin, and we are going to get a bit of all season. But I don't know. Again, it would be contrary to previous markets, really, because typically Ether would run and then alts would run. So I don't know. Maybe this is just a sideways move, and need to see a little bit. But as I said, like others, the market cap chart isn't quite some anywhere that I would want to look for longs yet anyway. So the confluence isn't there for a bottom for the market for me, just generally. And who knows, is this going to just reject this supply now and come back down again? Total DeFi dominance again was stronger before and has come down quite hard, but also holding support. Um, and total E100 dominance again came down hard before, but has bounced quite well. So I guess we're seeing some of the alts, or people are buying straight back into alts, which may just be crazy crypto traders. Um, but it seems a little early based on what Bitcoin's doing. Um, but I'm not sure. Like at the moment, like I say, so we have a lot of things hitting significant zones, but we don't have anything low time frame that's telling me to buy yet. So that's kind of the major point in summary number one. Secondly, my preference would be for Bitcoin Korea to make it down to this level. Um, for the case of alts, I would put others a bit lower, as I've said, and totally 100 a bit lower. So again, like I say, it's not quite there yet, but that doesn't mean some alts won't bounce. So if you are seeing alts that you like from a fundamental perspective, there's not you're at a point now. We've had enough of a drop for you to start looking for long entries if you think that there are things that are on major zones. The other thing from a confluence perspective is the majors. Well, let me just quickly look at Ether first. So Ether, yeah, because Ether's a bit more challenging. So Ether had a monthly demand here. It's in a massive 3 monthly demand. Let's show that quickly. It's not a good 3 month at all, actually. I think I've got it. I probably even shouldn't really have it drawn. It's a nasty one. It barely closed above, but it's this red candle and down to the bottom of that wick. So it's obviously come very deep inside that. But what it also did was went right through this monthly. And I did expect more of a bounce on that, but we've really got nothing. Let's bring the drawings back. But that was my circled area there. That was where I was hoping for some sort of a bounce, and I think we got that. Yeah, even the I did say that I didn't think the confluence was there with Bitcoin, and that I thought it could go to this black cross, which was nearer the start of the impulse. There were some stops to be taken out here, so and that was when we had confluence with Bitcoin being in that 1-3, the 113 to 127 fib area. Um, the problem we have now is so if it can possibly find support here and swing fail this level, but really, I haven't even got round to putting new entries on this. I think that on the lower time frame chart, I can see I've got an alert here. I do have an alert for this area there, but it becomes quite challenging because Ether, again, just to reiterate analysis I've done before, it's very similar to the others and total three and total two market cap charts. Like we have this macro double top. So any of the demand that I did expect a bounce on this monthly zone here of some sort. However, so I don't, so, I mean, maybe it had just been depleted through bouncing on the top of these wicks here. So like most of the time the wicks don't make a difference to me. However, at times of like maybe this is one of these times when it's finding demand like a bit too high, and therefore when it does come back and test, it's essentially depleted the demand that was in that area. But what I had also said is that this is weak demand. That if the demand is unable to significantly break supply, this demand, and even this demand down here are weak demand. Um, so, this is the start of the impulse. So there's nothing wrong with looking for potential long entries in these zones. Like you don't want to look for them blindly anywhere. But similarly here, this was weak demand, but it still gave a decent move. And in fact, when it went up, I think almost took out the high, but maybe not quite, or maybe just swing failed the high here before dropping. But the bigger picture on this, unfortunately, is still a double top and it's still a bigger range. So there is no reason now that this can't come down and take out this low or even this low. So I have said all of these are weak demands. And so going back to the chart, I was looking at this yesterday and kind of thinking, well, you've got maybe it'll bounce here on there's a 5 day and 3 day in there. Maybe it'll bounce here. There's a 5 day and a weekly there. But really, again, the 1300 area taking out that low is kind of my next real preferred entry on this, and that's a 3 month demand down there that was just missed when we had this test back in April last year. Um, so, maybe I'm being too bearish for now, but I mean, this is not particularly, other than, assuming this is going to find support at this low. We do have some wicks here. There is, it isn't a sort of an SR level. It's not necessarily just demand. Like I mostly look at supply and demand, but we can have some find support on support levels. If the rest of the market are looking at that, we're a bit below the 61 fib there. Let me see if where we are on the linear. Yeah, so the linear is much higher. We're a bit below the 61 fib on that. So really, I think there are some walls at 2000. That's the only thing I didn't comment on Bitcoin actually. So Bitcoin has significant walls at 70K, and Ether at 2K does have some decent walls. So it could pick up. There is a weekly level here, which I marked in. That dashed actually. So there is a weekly level at 2K. So you can watch that for an interim bounce. And then this 3 day and the weekly below would be the next two levels of interest. But again, I just don't recommend knife catching, and I had said that previously anyway. Just be very careful on this because of what the world is doing and what generally the markets are doing. We had this bounce in here, same as Bitcoin, but again, daily supply came straight off it. Um, I'm not sure there's much new to add. Yeah, ETH Korea is still just coming through that monthly itself. Hasn't broken it yet. Um, Ether CME has more significantly broken that previous low than the US dollar pair. So again, has some space to 2 day demand the next zone down, or there's a three, or maybe there's a weekly there at the bottom. I think that might be mislabeled. And the other thing is ETH BTC. So ETH BTC at the moment is sort of clinging onto this 12-hour, 8-hour demand, whatever that is in there. But if it does choose to fall off, noting it's coming from 6 months supply in here, I believe. Actually, no, I think it didn't make the 6 month, whereas I think Ether Dominance made the 6 month supply for a test up here. I think this swing failed a monthly supply. We had that level mark, but we were looking for a swing fail up there. But again, if this wants to drop, it has a significant space for it to fall. So all up, really everything's pointing towards okay, maybe we're going to get a bounce, but um, it's not the nicest confluence and it's not my most confident bounce area. Um, Similarly, on the majors, it's pretty much the same scenario. There's nothing here that I'm really loving. Like I've lots of things have hit zones with BCH. I think BCH is the only one that was being, and maybe that made a monthly supply there. Yeah. So BCH, oops, was in a 2 month demand, and I had that. Or is in a 2 month demand. So it's hit and miss at the moment on BCH. It is in a 2 month demand. I had that alerted. It's come down deeper inside to a 3 day. However, the close on the monthly was poor. So it closed then making a monthly supply. So both the 2 month demand is weak and the monthly supply is weak. However, again, just it's kind of indecisive. We're just figuring out what it's going to do. So doing well on these, putting these zones around. So we have had a bounce on this 3 day level. I have put an alert for this 2 day supply up here, and I think I've already talked about the one I had already above, just looking at low time frame entries. And I have frequently mentioned my reticence about the fact of everybody being very bullish on this and me feeling this is not bullish at all. This is very choppy and messy, and I never liked that. And I always was thinking this is going to throw some giant wick through this at some stage. I thought that would happen there, and it'd throw a wick through some of it, but not all of it. It's difficult because it does have major demand. There is an annual retest here, along with a new 3 month demand that hasn't been tested yet. But it's just, and you can see some of this vertical accumulation before bigger breakouts. But as I've commented quite a few times before, when you see the impulsiveness of this move, and even to some extent this move, and you compare that price action, it really doesn't look very strong to me at all. So I've always been slightly nervous of BCH, and I've continued while I think a lot of people just started going very long biased up here. I've continued to be, I was trying to get some longs, but also looking at, okay, we want to get into some shorts in case we are going to throw a massive wick through everything down here. And overarchingly, this is still in major annual supply. I think it's taken out that high now. In fact, this high I think may have already tested a bit higher in it, but um, we are still in a major supply, even though it has made some decent demand as well. So that's at a level I was interested in. Litecoin, I haven't got any, or I talked before, I haven't had any long entries on that because it's just too messy, and these zones are hit too many times on Litecoin, so I won't go into that. TRX has this weekly demand, so I did have that alerted at the top. It got a bounce right off the top of it, but again, straight into daily supply and then drop back down. Still holding this zone, has a double bottom there, so again, not really showing any signs of strength at this stage. So this can still potentially go lower, and it has a 3 month demand that it could test down here. BCH we talked about, and Ripple. So Ripple again, we were ignoring this wick. I had this 3 day, so before the wick, we had this 3 day demand, we had 3 day demand, and then we have an annual demand lower. So I'd re-alerted this, just presuming the wick that maybe it would refine support in this area to 61 fib of the wick as well. But again, so far, just dipping into the zone a little bit, but not showing any signs of finding support, at least on the daily as yet. So all up with these, ignoring Litecoin because that doesn't have a decent demand anyway. We have 3 of the 4 of them are in demand, but none of them are showing any strength to the bounce as yet. So the confluence, I guess, is there, but again, not decent zones. Similarly with all of these, so these are the new majors layout A. So again, BNB, Link, Doggy, and Ada are all in zones of interest. The black crosses were where they were just sort of ignoring the wick just to see if they picked up those zones of support, which they have done with the higher zones. But this time around, the new daily supplies made above, they really haven't got much of a bounce at all. So again, they just need some waiting time. Ada was the only one. I think Ada, like I thought, again, would take out that wick. So it did wick down and set off this alert for 3 week demand down here, but it bounced just above the zone, so I've reset the alert for here. So again, that's something you can watch. However, again, my bigger analysis on ADA has always been that there's the possibility it gets back down to these lower levels. Um, so again, I think on all of these, yes, we're in demand, with the exception of BNB. Actually, sorry, let me just slow down a bit and go back to BNB because I'm rushing through this pretty fast. I'm working on the assumption for this video that you see my previous video, so this is more just quick updates and also to get myself back across things. BNB is the only one that's in like a really major area. So this BNB is in 6 month demand. It's hit 6 month demand. It's a large zone. So obviously the wick, I have my drawings again. The wick goes all the way down to here. So it's a very large zone. However, this would be the one, if you're looking for long entries, this would be the one that would be the best bet. It's hit. So the alert went for the 6 month, and then there's a 3 week and 1 month a little bit lower inside. So I had that circle as that was where I really wanted to look for my entries on BNB. The only thing I haven't done on this is looked at the BTC pair. So if you do want to trade this, I suggest you check the BTC pair for confluence. So if BTC pair is also hitting support here, then it's potentially worth looking for longs on this. If BTC pair still has a bit of space to support, then give it some time and maybe wait for this to dip deeper into the zone. But BNB would be the most promising bet to try and find a bottom at this stage and then potentially have a decent bounce because this is a very high time frame demand. It did have a decent move off it. So if the BTC pair is confluent, then it's worth considering. Probably then followed by ADA. But even then, all the others, I'm just a bit skeptical of. I think, oh yes, the other problem, yeah, no, not ADA actually. So ADA, I had the issue that it created 6 month supply. So that's why we were looking for the shorts a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, this is probably actually much less high, but much lower probability, less high probability, lower probability than I'm making out. So yeah, be a bit more careful on ADA. So BNB is probably the only one here. Similarly, Link came off 3 month supply in there. So again, I'm not overly confident on longs on this. I still think that these have potential to go lower and they're not strong demand zones, hence the black crosses. And then finally, new majors layout B, which are generally the weaker ones anyway, with the possible exception of Sol, which sometimes can do its own thing. So I did have Sol hit. That really should have been a black cross, but it was a daily demand at the start of this last up move. It's taken that out. Still in the larger monthly demand, but again, second hit. Could go deeper, could still hold here, but I'm not overly confident. Came off 2 month supply at the high. Near hit 3 week demand. It's probably a similar setup to ADA. Again, looks like it wants to just go deeper in the zone. So, and yeah, Atom dots at an all-time low, so I just left that alone. That has no long entries. And Atom went through. It had I think a weekly or maybe a 4 or 5 day demand in here, which I had alerted. It had a little bounce off it, but then again took out the zone when the rest of the market fell. This is the only one actually, weirdly, that's looking, plausible. At least, and this is probably a good actually illustration of what I said before with others doing slightly better. This is one of the few. So while it's been looking ugly for God knows how long, it is back at the start of this major up move from 2020. So maybe, while it's not strong as such, or it was a little bit stronger last week, but it's held the low. So maybe this is indicative of some of those coins that are 3, 4 years old that are holding historic demand, and therefore allowing others' dominance to be a little bit stronger and holding the others' chart up a little bit. Whereas, yeah, the newer coins, like I say, without demand are the ones that are kind of going to all-time lows. I mean, there are obviously exceptions. Dot would probably fall into the same category as Atom from a timing perspective. It's been around for a similar few years, but it's already broken. So in this case, it has broken all-time low, so it's just kept going down. But I think there are a bunch of alts of this, like I say, the same kind of ilk. The new majors, but now not so major anymore as well, that are holding historic demand over here and therefore holding the others chart up. But anyway, as you can see on these, these are all looking pretty ugly. So I guess, and this is why I wanted to run this very quick run through everything very, very quickly because it's mainly looking for the confluence for a wholesale market bounce. And so what I have is a lot of things in weak demand, some things in higher time frame demand, like Bitcoin itself, like BNB. Um, However, large zones, so therefore you just need to wait. Like you can't blindly trade large zones because even if the zone does work, firstly it could go deeper inside, and secondly it could also consolidate there for 3 months before it actually does anything. So you don't want to just blindly jump into longs at this point. Like I said, if you're an investor, you could potentially consider some starting to DCA at some of these levels on BNB, BTC, etc. Um, but yeah, just the confidence isn't there for me enough to say, yep, go ahead and buy as yet. I still think we can push lower or push higher, or just wait and as always, just watch for those low time frame changes of structure. Watch, if you're following me or if you can follow your own chart, wait for Korea to drift a little bit lower. And let me try and think for a moment. So if the dollar is going to get weaker, then we would expect BTC Korea to drift a little bit lower, I think. Sometimes I have to think about that a couple of times to get my head around it. Um, the difference between the BTC US dollar chart and the BTC Korea chart tends to be what the dollar's doing. Um, so I tend to try and like a lot of when I've traded FX as well, like I look at triangulation between three pairs. So you're looking at BTC US dollar, BTC Korea, and essentially US dollar Korea, which occasionally I have looked at that actual chart, but sometimes mostly I'm just thinking about what the dollar's doing. Um, but normally when the dollar sort of starts to line up and even itself out, then you'll see the confluence come in across these two charts. And that's when it can give you a good indicator that now's the time to buy or sell, depending on which direction you're looking in. I think we have NFP this week. What's the date? It's the 5th today. So um, tomorrow we have NFP, so it might be worth considering, like tomorrow New York time, whether that's going to be the potential market reversal time. So you can consider that. Um, and yeah, like I say, just start watching from here. I haven't looked at any short entries yet. Like I haven't updated sort of some of these old levels on these charts. I haven't. I just was trying to figure out if this was the bottom rather than trying to think about where I'd short if we retraced. And also, like, I never want to waste too much time on that because, as you know, we've compared from the top. We've been comparing this down move in 2022, and I actually thought we might get another push up current in the current state before the drop. But obviously, we've got the drop now. But are we at this? See if I can get it all on the one page. Are we now at this point in time where around now or whatever, we're just going to get some little bounce. So I don't want to spend heaps of time thinking about where I'm going to short if we end up just with a very sideways bounce before another drop, playing out a similar pattern to this. I feel like we've already been a bit too similar to this, so I wonder if it's gonna be that easy because it's not. It doesn't normally let people in and out that easily. Um, My other big concern, I guess, as I said at the start, was that these stocks. So if we look at S&P, so we have been following this a lot less, but unfortunately, what we have been doing for a while is following this when it goes down, but not following it when it goes up, or only having very small bounce when this might do a big bounce and make a new high. Bitcoin's been having a small, just corrective bounce, and it concerns me that this is now obviously after many months of straight up, we're now getting this very sideways movement, and it does concern me that if this does decide it really wants to do a significant correction of a lot of this huge move that it's had since when is it? Since April last year. So it's almost a year of up, and you can see it rolling over now. And now rolling over could just end up as sideways for a while. But if it does want to roll over and correct some of that in the same manner as it did here, potentially, and I don't think it would potentially come down as deep as 5,400 unless there was some significant news in the world. But it has a whole lot of untested levels, as you can see all my green crosses. When S&P runs, it really wants to run. So it concerns me if this does roll over, it's really going to drag Bitcoin down fairly significantly. Um, So do just be careful. Obviously, manage your risk as you always should do anyway. Um, ETF buying is something else that you should keep an eye on, and particularly if you're looking for investment purposes. We did have a nice day of buying on the second, so I think after the initial drop, yeah, because a lot of the drop happened over the weekend. So after that, we then had some good buying on Monday, but unfortunately that was then followed by more selling the last 2 days. So that hasn't really supported. So the ETFs aren't really supporting price at the moment. And similarly on Ether, I think Ether didn't even really, it just had some selling. So even on the 2nd of February, it had some, BlackRock did some selling, and what's that, Fidelity did a little bit of buying, but it ended up as net just flat, really. So we're not seeing the interest come back in from institutional clients as yet. Um, what else? I think that's it. So yeah, the lower time, but this is the lower time frame chart. As I said, we've already gone through zones like the green circle on Ether was the one that was a major fail. The black box on Bitcoin got a little bit of a sideways movement, and as I said, it was a bit of a high risk. Just consider that zone type area. And as I said, we're now down into this 3 month demand on on Bitcoin. So we just need to see what we're going to get at this point in time. I don't think there's much more else to say than that. Um, Alts, like I said, so I need to get back on top of alts. Like I was kind of getting on top of them until 8,000 alerts went off. So I now have my new February watch list has already got. Let me find my February list. It's already got a fairly significant amount of alts on it. Those who watched the football video, we did get good bounces. I can see they're negative now, but I think most of the market's negative today. So you can see here, this is why I said vet and one, because like these, let me just show you these quickly, because I need to refresh this. I swear I deleted half of these zones, so I don't know why. Don't know why these charts don't appear to be updated. Maybe I just need to refresh the page again. But so as you can see, I mean, again, it's not an ideal zone in the case of vet because it's from when Binance opened for trading, but it has hit a 3 month level there. One I think was similar. Again, the wick went through, taking out these zones, but it's a retest of these zones. So it is possible some of these like bigger coins are the ones that are holding up the others chart a bit more. But then, I mean, whether that's sustainable, I don't know. Maybe it's just for an initial bounce and they're just going to end up drifting through these zones ultimately anyway. Yeah, as I said, the football coins. So I know CHZ. So if you watch the football video, you'll know I was waiting for CHZ and Santos to both hit this 2 month level. So both of them, the alerts went when we had the drop. Both of them had good bounces, and both of them are now retracing some of said bounce. So, yeah, in fact, I think so. I did reset this alert here on CHZ. Put that in as a second because I reset that alert. So I think this bounced slightly above the zone, but again, just watch this. I mean, I don't know, but this is just in light of the fact that we have upcoming World Cup. So you can go and watch my little football video. There were, I think, 5 or 6 football coins that I charted. There are a whole bunch more if you look at spot, but there were only 5 or 6 at least that I know of that are on futures. Santos and CHZ were the two that looked better than all the others because they were two and very, very rare in this market at the moment that have also flipped a monthly demand. So that's why I alerted these 2 monthly zones, or the 2 monthly demand in this case, 2 monthly demand here, and Santos is the same. So these have now hit. See Santos again. I've re-alerted for if it comes back. It did. Actually, I think so. No, Santos hadn't confirmed the monthly demand at that stage, so I think I had a 5 day and possibly this 3 week alerted. So it did hit that, and now I've re-alerted. Well, now it's confirmed the monthly demand. I would look for it if it comes back here again for a re-entry. Now, both CHZ and Santos, along with most of the rest of the market, are still coming out of fairly major supply. So it's still potentially early days to expect something significant. But given the World Cup is coming up, it's worth considering whether these might run, particularly because there is so little of the market that has actually flipped any supply to demand. So those are the only things that really are of note on alts right now. Like I say, most of them have just died. Let me see what H bar's at actually, because it's interesting that hit. Um, that's another one again, like I say, of the kind of older things. So again, this is back testing a 6 month zone, so that's potentially worth watching. So it is kind of interesting that some of these older coins are now hitting major zones. Um, but you just need to watch and wait for at least 12-hour, if not daily or even 3 day demands. Maybe you can get some of these smaller bounces on the lower time frames, but if we're going to get a significant bounce, it's potentially going to have a lot more time um, in consolidation before we actually get the bounce. And these things can obviously still come deeper in the zone. Maybe this is just a brief stopping point. So, like I say, it's very early days. I don't think there's anything much more on alts. Useless. I was waiting for a really long time for this zone to hit. I think somebody asked me where to buy, like back in August, and I said down here or possibly down here. And it's taken a really long time to get there. Obviously got lots of trades, both long and short in between. Nice short bias in here. So now it's hit again. Something else that's hit a zone, but that really hasn't shown much of a sign of bouncing. So I'm just not seeing that kind of interest come back into the alt market as yet. So do be very careful with any alt buys. Yeah, so I think that's about it. That was just a quick 45-minute video just to kind of show you where we're at. Don't get hopefully you're not in trades already, but don't get scared. Just give it a bit more time. Like I say, wait for BTC Korea to come down a little bit lower. I still think this could go. We could still get a bit more of a drop, or at least some sideways on the US dollar pair, while the Korea pair comes down a bit lower. If the dollar alters the triangulation between the three and the arbitrage. Um, Ether, be very careful. Yes, like I said, it could swing fail. Where it is now actually looks now more like it's starting to break down, but Ether could potentially go significantly lower. 2000 is the interim level to watch, and then, as I said, 1800 or 1600 are kind of the next highly dubious demand zones that you could consider looking for longs on. And yeah, like I said, and yeah, then finally the summary of the majors is that kind of the vast majority are actually hitting zones, but they're not strong zones in the first place, and I can very easily see them breaking. So I wouldn't really be recommending investment buying right now on any of those either. So unfortunately, yes, I'm still a relatively bearish. I would love to be otherwise, given at least, the only, the major things of Bitcoin being in 3 month demand is good, but we still need time and for it to give some signs that people are actually going to start buying first, which so far we haven't seen. We haven't got a V-shaped recovery, even on a lower time frame. Maybe we'll get that tomorrow in NFP, so we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, anyway, so that's extremely quick update. I went through all the charts very quickly, so I'm sorry if you're new to following me. You probably will have no idea what I'm talking about. Normally, my videos are a little bit slower, where I go into a little bit more detail. But because I'm behind at the moment, I really want to get across the market and not waste too much time on the detail. I'm out in Vietnam now. I'm on holiday doing a fitness retreat, my annual winter trip to escape from the cold. Um, and yeah, so I've settled down a bit over the last couple of days, like I should have a bit more time to do some charting. As always, please like and subscribe if you're interested. Please feel free to follow my Telegram and hit me up in Telegram if you have any requests of particular alts you want charted, or the 800 on my watch list, because there's an awful lot of them to get through. And other than that, I will try and do some more alt videos probably later this week. And if anything interesting happens on Bitcoin tomorrow with NFP, maybe I'll try and do a video tomorrow. And if there's anything worth reporting at that point. But for now, trade safe, don't FOMO into anything. Start a little bit of DCA if things are on high time frame zones, but again, just save your capital for when it becomes a little more obvious that we might have a reversal. And I hope you all are having a good week. Bye.